Hi, today I'm going to talk about self-compassion for moms in particular. This is a term that I came across a few years ago, and I have to admit at the beginning I thought it sounded very strange, being compassionate towards yourself. I'm a very kind and compassionate person in general, but I had trouble imagining doing that, redirecting that towards myself. Then I started applying it, and now that I'm a mom, I realize just how powerful and useful it can be as a tool. So I'm going to talk about this today. I find that as moms, we get ourselves into situations that can be really hard. Personally, my daughter is in tantrum phase and she gets into real tantrums in public. And I find myself to really be suffering during that moment because I cannot help her. She has to go through it, but I find myself suffering. So I try to use self-compassion. But I can give you other examples, which I'm sure you can relate to. Your child is sick and you're waking up like 5 times at night and you're super tired, and that's a really tough situation to be in. Or another example, you're really frustrated because you're at work while your child is sick and you can't tend to them because you have to be at work. That's a tough situation to be in. Or you're really hungry but you can't go eat because bedtime is taking 2 hours instead of 15 minutes and there's nothing to do, you just have to stay there. That's a tough situation to be in. So these are tough moments objectively, and there are many, but partly because of social conditioning, I guess, we're not really used to being self-compassionate. We think about it as, no, we're spoiling ourselves. And it can be really challenging at the beginning. With some clients, when we start talking about this, they even get emotional at the idea of being compassionate towards themselves. And the thing is, as moms, you know how to be compassionate towards others so well. Your children. You're being compassionate towards your children when they are sick, when they are hurt, or when they look like, they are suffering somehow. You're being very compassionate towards your children, but you're not doing that towards yourself. You're probably ignoring the fact that you're suffering, and when we ignore our emotions, they just grow bigger and bigger. You don't want to do that. And by the way, what I'm talking about is based on Christine Neff's work. I will link to her account in the description. So if you want to learn more about it, you can go check out her work. But it is scientifically proven, self-compassion is scientifically proven by her, among other people, to be highly beneficial for your mental health and your well-being. And it's basically just tending to your psychological needs in the moment. Because imagine that if you do that, you're more calm and composed and compassionate on the inside. And when you are like that, then you radiate that to the external environment, to your family and to your children. And so what are the 3 components of self-compassion? When the first one, is really important, is to realize that you're suffering, to be mindful of that moment, not to ignore it, to really see it for what it is. The second component is that of common humanity. And what do we mean by that? Self-compassion, it's about recognizing that suffering is part of the human condition. It's something that we all share, and especially as moms, there might be a million other moms, well, maybe not a million, 1,000 other moms that are experiencing the exact same thing at that very moment. So instead of thinking about it as something that happens to me alone, and that's so isolating and so hard, you can think of it as something that is just part of the common humanity. It's part of being human. As moms, we feel so alone very often. We don't admit it, but we do. So self-compassion can help you think about yourself as part of the common humanity. And the third element is to be kind to yourself. How do you treat your child when they are suffering? Do you tell them to just toughen up and stop and stand up? I mean, maybe you do, but it's not the best approach. But how would you like to treat them? You probably ask them, how can I help you? What do you need? What do you need right now? But do we take the time to really stop and ask ourselves, what do we really need when we're suffering? Imagine that you are, let's take my example, in the middle of the street and my daughter is having a tantrum. First of all, I recognize mindfulness that I'm suffering. Second of all, I realize that I'm not the only one suffering, that this is something that has happened to many moms throughout the centuries. and it's happening probably right now too. So it's not the only one. It's not, why is this happening to me? It's, how can I work with it? And then I ask myself, okay, what do you need right now? Do you want to take some deep breaths? Do you want to later on do something that would take your mind off this really tough situation? But it's just tending to the moment and not suffering that, tending to your suffering really. And think about it. I mean, if you have that endless source of compassion for your children, what would it feel like to keep a little bit of that towards yourself? I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you soon.